I'll continue to follow up here and see where we land.
Yeah, be happy to give a quick update, cover some of the topics that are certainly first in mind for a lot of folks, and then jump into taking a look at bills. We may have a few legislators joining us at 8:30. As you recall, we had 3 of our delegation join last week when we were going to do kind of the legislative updates for the legislators on the 1st and 3rd, but that conflicted with the Ben Chamber. So we're moving the legislators to 2nd and 4th, so it's kind of awkward. This is a 2nd. So we may have a couple legislators join us at 8:30. Again, for those of you around the Zoom, I see a lot of familiar faces, but I'm Doug Riggs with Northwest Policy Advocates, and we are your legislative representative in the Capitol. I'm not in the Capitol today. We have been in the Capitol 4 days a week. Actually, last week was 5, but from about 7:30 a.m. to about 7 p.m. on all those 4 days. It's been fast and furious. The building, as I've mentioned before, is restricted from the construction and the seismic upgrades that are underway. So it's really a very compact space with not a lot of amenities, no cafe, no coffee, etc. We just concluded week 4, so we're about 15% of the way through the legislative session. We'll be done by mid-June. I would say that the mood in the building is very good. It's very positive. A lot of people rolling their sleeves up and trying to work together, work across the aisle. It really, I think people are very happy to be back in person because there's so much more you can get done in the Capitol. It's a much more efficient system when you can talk to people and solve a problem in 30 seconds instead of having to spend a week scheduling a Zoom. So it's been very helpful. Our delegation has been very receptive. I think all 3 of the commissioners have been in the building. Phil, you've been in the building. Patty's been in the building, and Tony's been in the building. All 3 commissioners have had great meetings, I think, with our delegation. I'm talking to them almost on a daily basis, so we're keeping up to date with the key issues that they're working on, as well as things that the county has set as a priority. I'll give you one example. Working very closely with the delegation on the ADU wildfire fix, working on a bipartisan basis. We've had very good conversations with Senator Golden, as well as Senators Finley and Knopp, et cetera. So that's going well. Had great conversations on the ODOT fund exchange bill with a variety of legislators. There was a hearing a week ago, and Commissioner Chang and Chris Doty testified. So lots happening, and there's quite a bit of discussion on things like behavioral health, public health, et cetera. So lots going on. I would define the session so far as really a focus on big packages. We know that there are going to be overall packages passed maybe fairly soon, but definitely by the end of the session on 3 key areas. One is homelessness. We expect to see the homelessness package unveiled on Tuesday morning before the Housing and Homelessness Committee. Representative Dexter told me this week that they intend to unveil that package. They've been working on it with leadership, with Ways and Means, and with the governor's office. There's also going to be a semiconductor package that's being worked on by the Semiconductor Committee, which is one of those committees that meets until 6:30 or 7, 2 nights a week. So that's kept us in the Capitol. And I will mention that Deschutes County has worked closely with Redmond on the industrial land next to the airport. That discussion began in 2015 about, is there an opportunity for the tech industry to locate it at a large site between 100 and 200 acres. That's DSL land. I know the county is very familiar with this whole process, but the committee is really focusing on that piece of property. There's an opportunity for the Semiconductor Committee to perhaps fund infrastructure for properties associated with semiconductor development. So that might be a win for Deschutes County, and something that would be, draw workers from all over the Tri-County area. And then lastly, there's going to be a drought package. So there's quite a bit of discussion about what might be in a drought package, but obviously we're facing, yet another year of below average precipitation, flows, et cetera. So that's something that'll be front and center. Finally, the last thing I'll say is that we know ballot measure 110 will go through some revisions. I'm sitting in on the ballot measure 110 work group that had been meeting the previous 2 weeks. It did not meet this week, but they'll come back next week with another meeting. Representative Rob Noss is heading that up. And then behavioral health, for Holly, for you and Janice and the other people in the room who are focusing on behavioral health workforce, behavioral health rates, training, et cetera, et cetera. That's a hot topic. And you can see when you look through our tracking list, there are 25 or 30 bills all across the map. And so the question a lot of us have been asking in the building is, will they pass 35 different bills or some selection of those bills? Or will they do what the legislature seems inclined to do this session and try to put some of those together in an overall package, which to a lot of us would make more sense. I mean, for instance, Representative Noss had a bill that he talked about last week that would provide funding to Portland State University to train more social workers. But there's not just a need for social workers, there's a need to train more people in a variety of different areas. So is it just one bill on social workers, or do we have a bill that covers a number of different areas, QMHAs, QMHPs, peer therapists and mentors, those types of things. So I would be, I'll update you, but there's a lot of those discussions going on. And then public health is a big issue, and there already been hearings on that. So last thing I'll say is a lot of the beginning of the session tends to be educational, informational committees trying to figure out where they want to go. There are lots of new members. Some committees have a majority of new members. One committee has 8 of the 11 members are brand new. So I think a lot of the new members are trying to get up to speed. I've been very impressed by the new members, including the new members in our delegation. Representative Levy is a great example, has been great to work with and asks fantastic questions, and has stopped me in the hall several times to say, hey, how can I help, and keep us up to date. So we really, our delegation in particular is really fantastic this year, but the new legislators from around the state are a very impressive bunch. So I'm really encouraged. So I'll stop there because I know we've got several bills to cover, and we might have some legislators popping in just quickly to say hello at 8:30.
Thank you, Doug. I know we have about 20 minutes and we have 2 requests to testify from health services. So I want to go ahead and start there. I think, Holly, if you want to go first and kind of talk about the bill that you've been requested to testify on, and then we can transition over to public health, talk about that request and the one other bill on page 7 that we have yet to review with the full board. We do have Commissioner Adair online. So Holly, why don't you go ahead and lead us off?
Hi, good to see everybody. Holly Harris, Behavioral Health Director, and I was asked to testify by the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission on continuation of impacts funding. So this is a grant that we received twice now, and the total amount of about $4.8 million that's helped the Stabilization Center remain 24/7. And so they have asked for a couple of grantees to speak about the impact the funding has had on our community. I actually did this once before last session, so this would be retestifying on the same topic. And it's obviously very critical funding for our operations. So if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Holly, would it be helpful for us to provide written testimony from the county as well?
I think that would be great. I think any support towards this funding, I mean, the intent of this funding all along was intended the first year to be kind of a demonstration pilot project. And then the hope was to kind of turn it into what they've done for probation and parole, which is justice reinvestment kind of dollars, but for the behavioral health side of things. So my hope is that that's actually what's going to happen. We got the second year of it, but I think any support towards that movement would be a good thing for Deschutes County, especially given there's really no guarantees with any of these other bills that there's going to be funding for stabilization centers.
Well, I'm not sure which staff, but if staff could draft a letter for us and kind of not just express support for this bill or this package, but kind of that long-term big picture vision of a stable ongoing program that would have regular state funding. I would support doing a letter like that.
And I'm happy to send along to whomever. I'll send it to you, Whitney, the request I got from CJC that kind of outlines what is happening.
That would be great, and we're happy to work on that. Okay, so I think I'm not hearing any opposition to that testimony. Okay. And I think transitioning over to Tom, if you want to talk about House Bill 2574 and the other bill that you have captured on page 7 of the legislative report, that would be helpful.
Okay, great. Hi, Tom Kuhn from Public Health. And I'm requesting priority 2 support for House Bill 2574. And this bill makes post-HIV exposure prophylactics, also referred to as PEPs, more available, targeting rural hospitals. It's often difficult for rural hospitals to get these type of medications. And what's of particular interest is our health officer, Dr. Fawcett, who works often at the Redmond Hospital, has much experience in his many years working there with the administration of the PEP medications to healthcare workers who have accidental needle sticks. And so it has happened many times where healthcare workers are exposed to HIV because of this, and then is not prevented because they don't have the PEP medications on hand. And he drafted up a really nice testimony that we'd like to provide this Tuesday at 5 p.m. And he was requested by Oregon Clo and Dr. Lutke, who is the health officer from Lane County, to help them promote this bill. And I'm asking for priority 2 support. And Whitney has a copy of the testimony.
Do we have any sense of how many healthcare workers within Deschutes County or within our region might be at risk of these kinds of exposures each year?
No, I don't have that information. I could see if it's available. Dr. Fawcett made it sound like he has observed this happening on more than one occasion in his time at work in Redmond, where they do have it available.
Tom, thank you for bringing up that letter, and I'm in full support of you giving your testimony at 5 p.m. Thank you. It's Commissioner Dare.
Okay, great. Yes, it'd actually be Dr. Fawcett, who will do a great job testifying on our behalf. Okay.
Similarly, do we want to provide a letter or written testimony on this as well?
Yeah, I mean, that would be great if you're able to. I could assist in giving some information about it.
Or drafting something up?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Okay. All right.
Perfect.
Can I move to the next one? All right.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and actually, I think I actually have 2 other bills that I was going to ask prior to support. I think the third one is on the next page. So I'm requesting support of House Bill 3090, which basically prohibits distributing and selling of inhalant delivery system products that are flavored, as well as flavored tobacco products in the state. This is something that I've worked with the commissioners in the past on preventing, because if at least I know Commissioner Dare recalls a few years back when there were several deaths from these flavored vape products, and the commissioners took a strong stance against them. And once again, this bill has reappeared. And the thing about it is that the flavored vape products are the ones that are preferred by youth and often contain the more harmful substances. And even CDC said that these can include nicotine, metals, volatile compounds, and cancer-causing agents. So vaping products are not the safe alternatives to smoking. And as you all visually have seen, youth like to vape, and we hear about it all the time from our Healthy Schools programs, what a problem is, and basically would like support of this. Yes, Doug.
Yeah, I just say I've done a little work on this issue and research on this issue in the past. The other thing I'd add is that a lot of the vape canisters are produced overseas and are completely unregulated. So we are bringing unregulated, uninspected vape canisters in that youth are smoking, and you're exactly right. We have no idea what's in those canisters.
Yes. So no testimony or anything at this point, but I'm sure there'll be opportunities in the near future.
Thank you, Tom, for remembering that I supported this in the past, and I will continue to support it. So yeah, let us know what we can do to make sure this doesn't die, because I think it's really important.
Yes, thank you. Okay. All right, well, I'll move on to my third number 2, and this is actually the biggest piece of legislation for public health, as it usually is every big session. Senate Bill 5525 is the Oregon Health Authority budget, and within the budget is public health modernization funding. Right now, the governor has put forth an additional $50 million of public health modernization funding, which would be in addition to the 60 million that's already been approved in previous sessions. So this would bring Oregon's base total for local public health to 110 million, or excuse me, for public health modernization in total to 110 million. And this would look like approximately a 50% increase over current funding levels. So this is a really good opportunity for local public health to help keep infrastructure and capacity strong. And I'm not sure when this will come out in the session for testimony, but this will definitely be something we'll be supporting. Janice.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that this represents actually half the commitment that was requested for public health modernization. So there was a larger amount requested, and I think slated to come to public health was to local public health authorities was close to 100 million versus 50 million, with another 100 million targeted towards CBOs, and then some other dollars around the edges, probably for statewide infrastructure. So it's definitely important funding. It is significantly less than local public health authorities and their organizing entity thought was necessary to really get public health infrastructure to where it needs to be to respond to the current sort of realities of public health agencies. So just calling that out.
Yes. Any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Chang.
So is this bill OHA's entire budget, or is it like certain slices of OHA's budget?
No, it's the entire budget. I just highlighted the public health modernization portion of it. So there are many other portions to this. In the past, every time this comes up, this is about the third big session this has come up. I've always, either myself or our public health advisory board members have always testified in support of the public health modernization portion of the budget. So we don't go and testify on behalf of the entire budget if we testify specifically for public health modernization.
Well, I mean, Doug could help us understand more the pathway for this bill. Like, I don't know whether this comes out of Ways and Means or whether it comes out of one of the subject matter committees. But you know, I would be supportive of us, advocating for the 50 million of public health modernization funding, but also if we're talking to people about this overall OHA budget bill, I'm wondering if there are other pieces that we should also be advocating for, and kind of depending on the pathway for the bill, you know, whether that makes sense or not, whether, you know, if there's one committee that's dealing with public health modernization and another one that's dealing with other portions of the bill, then we would still want to make sure we talk to all of those, but especially if there's, you know, if this is like in Ways and Means and there's just one legislator to talk to, we might as well be talking about like the 4 or 5 really big things in the OHA budget that we want to advocate for. So I don't know if that made sense, but Doug, can you talk to us a little bit about the pathway for this bill?
Yeah, Commissioner, thanks very much for that question. Yeah, this will be probably one of the last appropriations bills that will be sent out of the Ways and Means Committee, probably in late May or early June. OHA and DHS tend to be the last 2 bills to exit the Ways and Means Committee. So the pathway is that the Ways and Means Joint Ways and Means Committee Subcommittee in Human Services has begun hearings on all the bills, all the appropriations bills that have to get through Ways and Means. They've started with DHS. So last week and this week they've been holding hearings on DHS. This week was all about self-sufficiency, which is one of the larger programs within the Department of Human Services. They haven't gotten to the Oregon Health Authority. My expectation is that's probably 3 or 4 weeks down the road. And then they'll have hearings on individual portions of the OHA budget for probably 3 weeks, informational hearings. So you're correct that there are, it's a gigantic budget and there are many programs in there, probably a number of them that we want to support. So we can certainly highlight some of those other opportunities for support as we move down the path. So we could support this individual item now, as Tom is suggesting, and then add to that list of supporting elements as we go down the path.
Great. Yeah. And I know at least I'm going to try to make it to Salem for the AOC Legislative Day at the very beginning of March. And if it would make sense to try to make the rounds with some of the members of what did you say? This is the Health Services Ways and Means Subcommittee, or
Human Services, the
Human
Joint
Services.
Subcommittee on Human Services, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, whatever makes sense in terms of kind of who to try to get to and speak to about this. It would be great to, if that timing seems right, I would love to try and make the rounds with some of those people in March.
Yeah, it's an interesting subcommittee. They have 2 brand new chairs. Senator Campos is served for 2 years in the House and is now in the Senate and is the co-chair of that subcommittee. And Representative Valderrama, who's in her 2nd term as well, and serving first time as a co-chair. And it's a big task to be responsible for the entire OHA and the entire DHS budget. There's lots of items and many tens of billions of dollars in those 2 budgets.
Okay, Tom, did you get everything you needed there?
Yes, those were the 3 bills I was asking for support of. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Just to see if we can slide a few more bills in before 8:30. Kevin, I think we have a couple bills under natural resources on pages 10 and 11 of the report that the board has not reviewed yet. Do you want to walk us through those, and knowing that we may have to pause if we see folks join the call?
Sure. Yeah, so the one that I reviewed is Senate Bill 653 that I was requesting support for. It appropriates $50 million to State Forestry Department to increase forest thinning operations on state land. And then also allocates $5 million to each wildfire prone county, which would include Deschutes, for forest thinning. For me, I just see this as a well-funded bill that could really improve some of the projects we have across the county. I think the Forest Service BLM are doing a pretty good job with thinning, but the state parks and county land, city land, all that is, besides the LRP, there hasn't been much funding as of recent. In my budget in particular, I don't even really have a line item to fund treating county land for doing any kind of thinning. So it just looks like a good bill. Some of the questions that would come up is there is not a lot of state land in Deschutes County. But if you think of it across the state of Oregon, especially for Department of Forestry, you know, some of your western counties do have a fair amount of land, and I would imagine a lot would be allocated to those. And then the other question would be whether that includes juniper woodlands or if they're looking more at conifer forests. Because I think incorporating juniper woodlands would be a good idea for that.
And could I ask-
Kevin, I got a question. Do these bills address anything regarding management of the debris that's generated off the thinning?
No, it doesn't really talk to that, but I would assume it would be all the operations when it comes to thinning. So, you know, thinning is usually a sequential set of operations. It usually includes the thinning, brushing, could include some burning, slash removal, all the above. And so it'd be a, you know, multi-step process would be my understanding.
No, thank you.
Kevin, I just want to share, I've been tracking this bill since last session when it was, I think, 1673 or 1573 or something like that. And trying to get some clarifications on legislative intent from Senator Knopp. AOC is now working on this bill as well. Brandon Persinger, the Natural Resources legislative liaison at AOC is trying to have some discussions with Senator Knopp. A couple things I can share are that juniper is included, or at least, you know, the people who wrote the bill, drafted the bill, said they wanted juniper to be covered. And I've been pushing for a little bit more uses or kind of clarifications that certain kinds of uses of these funds would be eligible. You know, when I first heard about this bill, I said, okay, well in Deschutes County, we don't have any state forest lands, and and the federal forest lands that we have are really, they are well funded in terms of thinning implementation dollars for the next few years because of that huge wildfire crisis investment under the infrastructure bill that the federal government made. So what we really need money for is for planning projects and for you know, prepping projects, you know, unit layout and tree marking, stuff like that. So you know, my requests to Senator Knopp were, you know, that we be able to use these funds for, you know, planning and site prep and unit layout, as well as implementation, and B, that we be able to use these funds for brush, dealing with brush, as well as junipers and you know, coniferous trees. Haven't gotten any response back on those requested amendments, but that's kind of the direction I was going with this. And at AOC, there were a whole bunch of counties that said, look, like we have a severe fire crisis risk as well. So they are advocating for the $50 million to be split for not just 10 counties, but like 25 counties, each getting $2 million. So it's less money, but I think, I do think that it's a smart strategy. You know, the more counties that are benefited by this, probably the more of a constituency they have to move the bill along. So less money, but maybe more certain money for us, or, you know, better chance of getting the money. That's what I know about this bill so far.
Yeah.
To add, on Wednesday at the board meeting, Commissioner Dare had a question about how much land does the state own in Deschutes County. So I looked it up, and this is across all state departments, but the state owns 50,000 acres of land in Deschutes County. The total acreage in Deschutes County is about 2 million, so that's about 2.5% of the acres is owned by the state. Most of it's most likely the state parks and ODOT.
Okay, Kevin, I just wanna, I know that we have a few folks joining the call. If we can pause, and turn things back over to Doug, and return to this conversation. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Whitney. I will, Commissioner Chang, just so you know, I'll follow up with Brandon and Senator Canope as well. I know this bill came up in a discussion that I had with some of their staff just a week ago. And it also falls within the overall discussion that is happening on thinning, biomass, wildfire prevention, et cetera. In a lot of places, brush piles that had been prepared for burning during the wet season have not, the state has not allowed those piles to be burned, and so they're building up, and we're going to get to the summer and have the possibility of them catching fire in a summer fire season. So I think this is an issue that definitely needs to be addressed. So so thanks for raising it. I think we've got Representative Iverson here. If we do, we'd love to welcome her and give you an opportunity to give us an update. Hi, Patty. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. I actually just pulled into the basement of the Capitol. So, excuse me, I'm likely to lose you in just a couple of seconds when I go up the elevator. But I thank you for allowing me to join you today. And I came in a little late, so I'm not sure exactly. Sorry, I'm going to pop in later when I get out of the construction zone of the Capitol. So I apologize for the background noise.
That's okay. As soon as you come back, we'll go to you and get a quick update on what you're working on and give you a couple of the issues that we're tracking. Great. So Whitney, maybe we could finish the discussion on 653, and then when Representative Iverson comes back. Oh, do we have Representative Rutschke, who I already talked to this morning at 7:30.
Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I think you were here part of last week, and so we gather every Friday to kind of go through the bills. We were just talking about Senate Bill 653, which provides money to counties for forest thinning and clearing issues. We've talked about a variety of other things, including public health this morning, some public health bills that are very important to counties, and a few other issues. So why don't we turn it over to you, and if you just give us an update on how the week has gone, what you're working on, and anything that you think we ought to be focused on the next few weeks.
Sure, and thank you, and good to be with you this morning. I'm just going to kind of give a broad overview, and I'll let Leader Breeze Iverson probably fill in more of the details because she has probably a better view than I do. So I sit on revenue, so I watch money come into the building, and I sit on Ways and Means, so I watch it go out. As far as policy committees, I'm not as attuned just because I'm not in them. I see them when they come to the floor, bills come to the floor, but not kind of the process that you're looking at. I'd just say the temperature of the building right now is pretty tepid, which is good. We're still in rainbow and puppy dog mode, where everybody's friends with everyone and all the school children are getting to know one another a little bit better. No real controversial bills have popped up in committee, or if they have, again, the temperature's been quite low, which is good because it allows for offline discussions between legislators for differences of opinion without necessarily going out to the media and throwing bombs at one another, which doesn't seem to work very well. So that's where we're at right now. Could that change next week? Yeah, it just depends what bills start to move and don't move. But I'm happy right now. I'll just say from the House Republican perspective, we've had more bills heard this session that are our members' bills in our tax committee than I think I ever remember. So that's good. We have a lot of them in there, things such as like updating the threshold for the corporate activities tax, or increasing the threshold for when people pay the estate tax, the state tax, those sorts of things that will affect small businesses and especially folks in Bend whose properties are appreciating really quickly and will get over that $1 million threshold. And if they pass away, their heirs may not be in a position to pay the tax without liquidating the asset. And so increasing that threshold, because we're getting accidental millionaires, increasing that threshold won't cost the state that much, but will help Oregonians keep that generational wealth in the family.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure if we have Leader Iverson back. Vicki, are you available to, there we go.
I am back. I'm out of the elevator. So I appreciate that you were maybe letting me know what it was that you wanted to hear from me when I ended up in that construction zone and I did not hear you at all. So what is it that you'd like for me to update with you guys today?
Well, we're going to meet every 2 weeks with all of you. We'll do the second and fourth Fridays, and I think the most important thing is what we'll do is let you know if there are 2 or 3 issues that are of critical importance to us or what the county is working on. For these first couple meetings, we'd like to hear from you, kind of your sense of where the session's going, how it's going, and maybe the key issues that you're working on that will impact your constituents in Deschutes County.
Thank you. So as leader, the 2 committees that I sit on is House Rules and the Joint Ways and Means Full Committee. The Joint Ways and Means Committee has not done anything more than an organizational meeting at this time. So we don't have anything flowing there. I think we'll probably start to see a little bit of agency stuff in the coming weeks, but probably, still a couple weeks out for that. The Rules Committee has done some low-hanging fruit, shall we say, things that the Secretary of State needed corrected or the county clerks needed corrected, very more technical or minimal impact, but more functional for the agencies versus anything crazy. Having said that, I know in that committee, we're going to have a conversation about ethics in the building, which will be interesting, of course. And I think we have the conversation every 2 years and no major changes seem to come out of it, which is good and bad. The other thing that I am working on getting us at least an informational conversation about is the governor's powers and how those are enacted when she calls her, declares an emergency and issues her executive orders, how long, when, and how those powers are affected for Oregon. And do we need to have some more checks and balances in those? And so I'm looking forward to that conversation. There currently is, I think, somewhere around 5 or plus bills that in some way limit or discuss that. So I'm encouraged by the fact that we're actually having that conversation. The reality is, I'm still the minority leader. So we're out of a super minority in the building, but we're still in a minority. So the fact that we're able to at least have the conversation in our committees to help set agendas and bring some of our bills forward is something that we haven't really been able to do in the past and feels like a good foot forward. Having said that, I'll say that if you've listened to how the session started, there's been a lot of conversation between the speaker and I that we want to have more collaboration as this session moves forward. We are committed to that. We're still having very regular meetings. In fact, I'm at the Capitol this morning as I have a meeting with him in just a few minutes. The reality of the policy things we're seeing in front of us, there's a lot of things being vetted in the different policy committees, and I really, those things are going to kind of bubble up and come to my attention in the near future, but they're at this point getting hashed out in policy committees. The housing package that we've heard the governor refer to, that what she wants to do in the first 60 days of office, she wants to be able to sign a bill that basically puts resources or dollars into homelessness in the state of Oregon, is probably the the thing that is of front and center at this time in our legislative assembly and both in the House and the Senate. There is a joint effort to try to figure out what that looks like. And of course, you'll hear me have those conversations that if we're going to do this, we need to do it in a way that is equal across the state, not just having dollars flow into populated areas, but also remember the rest of the state that doesn't have access to some of the same nonprofits that are, first blush mentioned in receiving those resources, but trying to figure out how to get it into the rest of the communities and smaller counties. So I think that wraps it up in kind of a heartbeat. I'm happy to answer a couple of questions if they're out there.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Representative. Commissioners, do you have any questions for either of the representatives?
I have a question about the inheritance. Thank you, E. Warner-Ruski, for bringing that up. I believe is Oregon one of the only 11 or 12 maybe states in the nation that have inheritance, and I realize ours is incredibly progressive. Is there anything else happening to change that dynamic of Oregon?
Thank you, Commissioner Adair, for that question. Oregon has a $1 million threshold. So if your state is less than $1 million, there's no tax. If it's above $1 million, then you start getting taxed on that amount above $1 million. And again, like I said, in Portland, in Bend, in Ashland, in Medford, in these cities that have been growing and growing faster than housing stock can be built, the value of homes are going up. And the problem is, and it's not just in Bend. I mean, I'm sure we're going to see this in La Pine and probably already in Sisters and Redmond. But as the value of houses go up, people are becoming accidental millionaires. And so they may have wanted to keep the house. The heirs may want to keep the house for their grandchildren or maybe themselves to move into. But with this tax, they're saddled, they're cash poor. And so the only way to pay the tax is to sell the asset, sell the home, maybe when they don't want to, or the market's down, but you still have to sell because you got to pay the tax man. So Oregon, to answer your question, Oregon is the one of the most aggressive in that regard at $1 million threshold. I think Washington's 2.2 million. And surprisingly enough, California has zero inheritance tax. The federal tax starts at 12.9 million. So I have constituents in Klamath Falls that have thought about selling their homes in Klamath Falls and moving to California to stay in the area, but know that their time is limited on this earth and want to preserve that asset for their children. So that's not a good thing. We don't want to lose human capital. We don't want to lose folks that way. And so the issue we heard this week was to raise it from 1 million to 2 million and index that to inflation. There's other bills in there that are a little bit more complicated, but that's the one the chair wanted to hear, and that's where the discussion is.
Thank you so much. Yes, as somebody who it was really interesting moving to such a progressive, and it's, and now we see the cat tax on everything we're buying, even though they say Oregon doesn't have sales tax. Aren't we one of the highest tax states in the nation? And don't we need to look at that and perhaps change some of those decisions? So thanks for being there and working so hard.
You bet.
I see Commissioner Chang has his hand up.
Yeah. If I could ask a question to Representative Breese Iverson, and this is sort of in response to the concern about kind of not having the organizational infrastructure in place to be able to move in the same ways on homelessness initiatives. As some of the larger, more urbanized counties, I was hearing in the affordable housing discussions about a bill to try to sort of build capacity to provide essentially state human resources to build capacity to be able to move forward on housing projects or affordable housing projects and workforce housing projects in smaller communities. And I was wondering if there could be some kind of similar approach on homelessness. Basically somehow creating some human resource capacity that could be used in smaller communities across the state to be able to better put state resources, state funding on the ground if state funding becomes available. And clearly that, that affordable housing effort, if that comes to pass, that would help as well, because much of the homelessness problem we have is because we have a lack of housing and we have a lack in particular of affordable housing units. But and any thoughts on that? Basically how the state can help build the capacity at the local level to address homelessness and housing insecurity.
Thank you, Commissioner. So for me, it's really, I'm not looking for how we create another entity, another department, or another office to try to figure this out. I do believe that our local communities, our local government knows the community and has opportunity in place to focus there if they can get some resources. So example, every community has emergency management. Each community utilizes that slightly different. Is there opportunity in that capacity to flow some dollars and get some actual help on the ground for some of these folks? The initial blush of what's coming out of the homeless package is something that I believe the governor wants to see dollars on the ground immediately. And if we look at historically, the flow from the legislature to through the governor to the agencies to the communities, that progression of creating something new or trying to stand up a new program takes years. And what I've seen in the last 2 years is even longer than what we've seen prior to that. And that's a combination of things were shut down. We don't have a workforce. There's just an accumulation of things that cause that to be the case, but that's the reality. So I'm interested in what each community has in place that we could support. Every community is different, and there is no streamlined way to do this like a one and done, as far as all the dollars are going to go into here and we're going to spread it equally across all the communities. It doesn't work that way. We can't look at just one group of nonprofits that, for instance, say they service communities that when you go into the communities, those communities have never heard of these nonprofits. It's not that they can't service them, it's just that they don't really have a presence in those communities. So what I'm looking for is what each community can do and what's already in place there that works, that we can support. So that doesn't answer all of your question, but it's really kind of focused on the homeless side of that question of resources.
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining your kind of the way you look at this and your approach. I would mention that Deschutes County is part of the pilot program that was the Coordinated Homeless Response Office pilot program that was started last year or a year and a half ago. Last year, out of House Bill 4123. There are, if I remember correctly, 8 total coordinated homeless response offices formed between county and city governments, sprinkled across the state. And actually, most of them are in some of the smaller communities that are not necessarily covered by the governor's $130 million package. So I would just suggest that is a great, I think that's a great place to start in terms of kind of understanding what local organization is already on the ground in rural Oregon. because those communities now have been at it for at least, 6 or more months, working on developing a strategic plan together, kind of figuring out how cities and counties are going to work together. And so I know, I haven't tracked it as closely as I'd like to, but I know that they're coming up with some really innovative local approaches and local solutions at the ground level, sprinkled across Oregon, out in Umatilla County, here in Deschutes County, up on the gorge, and then several places on the coast and in the Willamette Valley. So, if I could just make the suggestion that if you're looking for, homegrown local capacity and local kind of planning that's already in motion, that would be a good place to make additional investments in. I think that those HB 4123 pilot communities would be one place to look. And that doesn't necessarily cover all the state wall to wall either, but it definitely gets beyond I think the initial 10 counties that were mentioned in the governor's emergency declaration.
Thank you for that. Duly noted.
Yeah, Representative Iverson, I want to echo what you just said about trying to get to a point where the legislature holds agencies accountable for getting funding out to communities, because that has been in almost every agency a real challenge. The one example in the behavioral health world, we know there's a workforce crisis. In June of 2021, the legislature passed a bill, House Bill 2349, to fund workforce development projects. And yet until this January, almost none of that money was out, so almost 18 months to get the first tranche of funding out for that bill. So timelines, clocks, the project turnkey model in Future Ready Oregon, Section 3, there was a 60-day clock to get money out to local workforce boards. That worked. You got money on the ground, including in Central Oregon for East Cascades Works within 60 days, and money was on the ground and training programs within weeks. So efforts, I think, for the legislature to make sure that in a crisis, funding gets allocated to trusted partners like counties in a responsible amount of time is a fantastic concept.
Not only is it a fantastic concept, but then it actually works. Thank you, Doug, for bringing that up, because this is obscene when something takes 18 months to get the funding out. Yeah, government in action. What is it? So thank you. Yeah, Representative Breeze Iverson, I know you can keep them going.
Thanks, you guys. I do appreciate the feedback, and I apologize, but I'm going to have to scoot out of here. I've got a meeting with the speaker to talk about housing. So I thank you for letting me be part of this. I'll continue to keep it on the calendar and join as much as I can. And my door is open. So please, and Doug knows this, he knows exactly where to find me, but please let me know when things have reached your guys' awareness and you want to make sure it's on my radar. I appreciate that.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And Doug, I'm going to bow out as well. I have a 9 o'clock. I can't drop the speaker's name and sound important, but I do have another appointment. So I will, I appreciate the time with you this morning. And again, just reach out to Doug or myself if you have questions or concerns and see where I can help. So thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks for both of you. Appreciate it. Great. And I just want to echo, both of them have been very gracious and sitting down with us almost daily. I walk by and see them in the halls or sit down with them. So if there are any issues on bills that come up, funnel those through the commissioners and Whitney and Nick, and we can make sure we get information to them fairly quickly. But as I said at the beginning, I'm really impressed by our delegation, and they're working together. They're meeting on a bipartisan basis on a daily basis, which is great. So I'm optimistic we can get a lot done this session. I think we are up against the clock, 9 o'clock. Whitney and Nick and the commissioners. I'm happy to stay a few minutes extra if you want, or we can reconvene next week, same bat time, same bat station.
Commissioners, we just have 2 additional natural resources bills, which we're happy to hold for next week, if that's your preference, or we can review them today. It's completely up to you.
Does Kevin think they're important that we should hear them right now? What's Kevin's call?
I won't be at the session next week, so yeah, maybe we need to review them.
Let's do it right now then.
Okay.
Go. Thank you for the heads up.
So I'm not sure on the second one. It looks like we have the House Bill 3142, which directs Oregon Department of Administrative Services to provide grants to counties and soil and water conservation districts for removal of western juniper. Appropriates money for grants, requires department to provide grants within 60 days of effective date of act. It looks like this does kind of revolve around more than juniper health. It seems to revolve around benefit water resources. So I don't know if I'd probably remain neutral on this one. I think there just needs to be a little more clarification on what the purpose is, because it is allocated to the soil and water conservation districts for grants, instead of like some of your upland juniper, which is, I don't know if they're trying to target that as well. So yeah, I just remain neutral on this one. I don't have too much more to say on it.
I'm happy to jump in because this is my bill. This is the Central Oregon Cities Organization bill that they've been working on for a better part of a year and a half, along with the irrigation districts, the soil and water conservation districts, and many of the other regions of the state. It's growing in interest. You know, as Commissioner Chang has pointed out, Deschutes County probably has less of an opportunity to make a huge impact on water resources than other counties. And so if you look at the allocation of funding in the bill, Deschutes County is the smallest allocation, but still, according to the DRC and the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, there are some areas that could be very pinpoint targeted with juniper removal efforts that would probably have a significant impact on stream flow and tributary restoration as far as water levels. But other counties like Jefferson County, Crook County, Klamath County would probably have a larger opportunity, and also an opportunity to coordinate these efforts with NRCS and Department of Agriculture funding that's coming in from the feds. That bill is up for a hearing on Tuesday in the House Committee on Agriculture. There's a long list of panelists and witnesses signed up. It's a bipartisan bill. I think it's likely to be included in the drought package that I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, because drought is pretty key for most of Central and Eastern and even Southern Oregon. So, so neutral is fine. But I would think that it would be something that the county would want to track going forward.
I want to support it, because I have a lot of juniper out where I live, and actually talking to people that live in Aubrey Butte, they said, oh no, we've got a ton of juniper there. So I believe that there's other issue. You can call them, what is it, a Roman candle? So I definitely, I see whenever we have any rain or any snow, nothing gets under my juniper trees. It goes to the tree. So I believe it's a support.
I guess I would just say, if this is framed primarily as a benefit for water resources, then I don't think it's necessarily our bill. But if the bill could be reframed to emphasize the benefits to habitat, the benefits to community wildfire protection, then it is very much our interest in Deschutes counties. Because those are really the reasons why we in Deschutes County want to be dealing with Western juniper, not so much, for the impacts that's going to have on shallow groundwater, which it would only have in immediate proximity to like White Shoes Creek and places like that. So that's, that I don't know whether that's a support with amendment or, and Doug, you could tell us whether it's even possible to kind of reframe the bill, in terms of what it relates to or whatever, at this point, because, that the emphasis on water, I guess my big concern is that if we emphasize to people that cutting juniper is a benefit for water resources in Deschutes County, it distracts people from the things that we need to be doing in Deschutes County that really help us address our water resource concerns and drought reliability, drought resiliency. So that's just it for me. It's more of a matter of the framing of the issue than it is a question of whether doing juniper, rolling back post-European settlement juniper is a good thing or not. Because I do think that that's a good thing. It's just we want to be talking about it in the right way.
Yeah, Commissioner, thanks for that question. That's an issue that has led to much discussion in the last few weeks. And I think that what you'll hear from witnesses next week is two things. Number one, in development of the bill, they were trying to figure out how do you make sure that it's not a scattershot approach. There's a limited amount of money. So how do you put the money in a very limited number of areas where you'll have the most impact? Water being a key issue for the basin going forward. But I think you're right. The change in discussion recently has been, hey, by the way, when you do this, then you also have impacts on sage grouse habitat, native grassland and grass species, mule deer, and wildfire. So I think all 3 or 4 of those issues are key issues that will be raised during the hearing. So even if the definition is still, I think, in the bill going to remain targeting a very small number of areas. And interestingly, soil and water conservation districts are already drawing the maps. Right now, we've asked for kind of target maps, and it's interesting where some of the areas are. Almost all of them in all the counties line up with existing juniper removal efforts that do the types of things that you talked about. So I think there will be a broader discussion. Clearly, those are positive impacts that the sponsors of the bill want to see occur, and so the framing, as you pointed out, has been changing over the last. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Commissioner Chang, the reframing of it, just and really incorporating the, if it is going to be specific to the soil and water conservation districts, maybe it could complement that Senate Bill 653. But as long as somewhere within the package of bills, they're really looking at those eastern sage steppe ecosystems that are, we're losing to juniper encroachment, and that's an issue as well. So, and then as far as Whitney, I'm not sure on the other bill that you were speaking of.
And I think just for staff's clarity, I heard a priority 2, and then just in terms of where we want to land for position, and we can revisit this if I think I heard support with amendments. I'm not sure. We can kind of keep this flagged if we need to.
Yeah. If I could just say that what I would like to see is I would like to see this bill broadened, HB 3003, to provide incentives for all kinds of renewable energy projects, not just power generation, but also biofuels, thermal energy projects. You look out in Harney County and the biomass energy projects that they have built. don't produce power. They produce district heating, or, you know, hospital heating, or, you know, school building heating. And you know, a bill that incentivizes power generation from Juniper isn't going to do anything to help those projects. But those are the projects that are actually economically viable enough to get built. The renewable energy projects that could use Juniper feedstock. So that would just be, I would encourage this bill to be broadened to other kinds of renewable energy, and then I would be fine supporting it.
Commissioner, you're a mind reader, because that same discussion took place. We had a conversation with Representative Marsh, Representative Owens, Representative Retschke at 7:30 this morning, right before this call, and that exact same issue came up. We had Dylan Cruz from Sustainable Northwest on the call, and he pointed out the very same thing. And so I think that you'll see some amendments to 3003, or possibly using a different bill. There's a different biomass bill, House Bill 2685, that has a broader relating to clause. So it may be that we're going to put together a discussion panel to go through and talk about, you know, is there a way for the bill to be expanded to include other issues like that. So very good points. I've written your comments down, and I'll get back to you in a few days with some feedback on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, with that, I would maybe support with amendments along those lines.
Okay, Commissioner, are there any thoughts there on House Bill 3003?
My thought is we need to do something about the junipers that have taken over Central Oregon. And they are out when I do my drive every day. Do I see a million of them? Maybe not a million, but I see 999,000 of them. So I would, I want this to get through, and I don't want it to be distracted. We need this in Central Oregon. So Doug knows I am all for this bill. I just, you know, don't want it to be lost.
Okay, so I think on both House Bill 3003 and House Bill 3142, I hear Commissioner Adair in support and Commissioner Chang with support with amendments. And so I think for staff, we'll probably keep these flagged and revisit both of these at a later meeting that Commissioner DeBonne is able to attend, if that works for the board. Sure. And then I think, thank you, Jen, for we were discussing Senate Bill 653 prior to having legislators join the call, and I'm not sure that we heard clarity on final priority and position for that bill. We can also hold that for a later meeting or continue the discussion today.
I think it's okay to hold it for a future meeting, because all of those, you know, potential amendments that I described or suggested were in motion. AOC is working those with Senator Knopp's office right now.
Okay. So I think that gets us through the remainder of the bills on the report today. Commissioners, anything else that you'd like to discuss before we wrap up today's call?
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. And I just want to say thank you again for everyone for participating. This is very helpful for Gabe and I to hear the conversation from the commissioners and the staff, and look forward to talking again next week.
Thanks, Doug.
Yes.
Thank you.